It's good to see. We got a couple of people from the community here. Welcome, everyone. All right, let's kick this off. Good day, good evening, everyone here. Welcome to another week of Rocket Pool Community Call here. And as usual, I get to be joined by Langers and Mav. And it seems like there's been actually quite a lot this week we're going to talk about. I guess foreshadowing just a little bit, we're going to talk with Langers about a little bit about the R&D side of the house, right? When is Smart Stack V2 coming? There's a number of things coming up with Saturn. I think we've got some much better clarity about Saturn 0, Saturn 1, Saturn 2. So, Langers, you've been active in the governance forum there. And then Mav, it looks like we've got a couple of things that are hot and breaking here in kind of either the DeFi integration area or the continued discussion about home staking and its importance or lack thereof to Ethereum. And I guess we're going to hear a little bit about the team's perspective on some of those recent Twitter conversations. I assume they'll probably all continue all the way through DevCon, and maybe we can end and talk a little bit about DevCon and the team's plans for being in Thailand in now less than 30 days from now. So does that sound like a pretty good plan for today?
Certainly does. Yep.
All right, and I encourage anyone that's listening here to always feel free to jump in with questions or post them here in trading. I'll get that kind of spun up here on my computer as well. But maybe let's start, Langers, with you. What's the latest with the Smart Node now? Last you left us, you were testing it a little bit, and what have you learned? When's it coming, and when can we say goodbye to V1?
So yesterday was actually a public holiday for us, so I would be more informed usually, because I would usually have had stand up yesterday. I haven't had a chance to talk to Thomas and Fornets today to see where we're up to on the last little bits that they were kind of like polishing up. So I'll have a chat with them and see what's going on there. So basically where we're at is we've got a couple of little things that we're polishing up, but that hopefully that'll be very, very soon. And so we can do a kind of like a final build. Patches is doing like a side-by-side comparison of the he's kind of running in the background like a side-by-side comparison of the reward trees, so that we can see if there's any divergence between those things. But yeah, I just need to kind of like figure out when we can get this kind of like final build put together. With the rewards tree stuff, I think we've spoken about the strategy with the ODAL, and I think we've got to kind of like review it this week, whether we go kind of 51% V1 and 49% V2 initially, and then move forward, or we basically do both feet in the V2 camp. But we're kind of like figuring out what that rollout strategy for the ODAL is. But yeah, in terms of when, very, very soon, but I just need to get kind of like confirmation on those last little bits about when we can put the last build together.
And then asking you to foreshadow a little bit, do you expect it, when you say soon, you expect it before DevCon or during DevCon?
Yes.
After DevCon?
Yes. So okay. So in my mind, yes. The only thing that could probably stop it is if we get significant. Well, even then, I think that's not too bad. But we could probably manage it via the ODAL. But the only thing that might stop it is if we get like too much divergence on the reward tree side. But then we could release it to the general, populace, or the general node operator set, because all of those functions are perfectly fine. It's just it'll just be the reward tree in that particular case, because we did identify a divergence. Now we weren't quite sure whether that was an infrastructure problem or whether it was a tree problem, and so the team had just kind of from that out. We did find a problem with responding to challenges as a proposer as well, which the team have kind of like basically fixed over last week. So I think we're just finishing off that to make sure that's good, and then it should be ready to go. But I'll talk to the team today, and I'll get more information out about that today.
Okay, and then just a couple follow-up questions. You said there was some divergence. Was the divergence also fixed too? So you're feeling confident
And
now?
the reward tree.
The reward tree. Okay.
It was the reward tree, and again, we weren't not sure whether it was an infrastructure problem, whether it was like the archive node that it was actually talking to, or whether it was actually a divergence. So that's why Patches is doing like the side-by-side comparison to make sure that we identify any of those things very early.
Okay. And then if I paraphrase here, what I think you said is you'll figure out the rollout schedule. It sounded like
Yes.
Like obviously there's two groups. There's the node operators that have to operate V2. There's also the ODAL node operators that have to operate V2. And I guess you'll spend some time with the team to figure out if they do a mixture or if they all jump at once. And do you expect kind of a signaling about when this should happen this week, or like when would we expect the next update about when V2?
Sometime this week. So I just need to kind of like figure out where the team's at. As I said, I would be more organised, but because of the public holiday yesterday, I have no chance to. And this being first thing in the morning, I haven't had much chance to catch up with them. But yeah, I'll be able to give kind of more information on that this week.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. All right. And now maybe let's talk a little bit about our favorite Saturns here, and maybe at first case without front running the vote, but a lot of people have voted. I think we've reached quorum on the votes here. It still has about a week before it closes. So, but there's been a really good guidance from Val, command that I actually just ran in random here, which kind of explains Saturn. He's got two versions of it, a detailed version, and then a kind of explain it to me like I'm 5 version. That talks about the key objectives or differences of Saturn 0, Saturn 1, and Saturn 2, right? And Saturn 1 is the one that's up for vote right now. And Saturn 1 is just a set of...
Saturn 0.
Saturn 0, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. Saturn 0 is the one up for vote right now. And it's a set of changes to the protocol settings, right? There's already a couple of needed corrections that are in the Houston hotfix, right? Or maybe even before Saturn 0, maybe we talk about the hotfix, right? Because I guess sequentially that's going to come first, right? Maybe fill us in on the hotfix. Where are we with that?
Okay, so with the hotfix, it is so obviously it went up for I'll sort of start from Houston. So once we released Houston, reasonably soon after, there was like a bug raised with kind of like legacy mini pools. It was like 16 ETH mini pools, but they're actually one of the older delegates, which, to be fair, is actually very, very difficult to test those older delegates, which is why Saturn 1 includes a way for us to avoid the situation where we've got older delegates hanging around. And also, Kane's putting together some testing framework to help us a little bit better with that sort of stuff as well. But essentially, there was a problem with the legacy mini pools where if they tried to exit before they initialize their vote power, then they would have issues basically trying to exit their mini pools. So we implemented a smart node fix a smart node workaround and to kind of like stop people from getting into that bad state in the first place. And then obviously the smart contract fix, which takes a lot longer to kind of like percolate through the development process, we've kind of like put that fix in there as into the hot fix. So that was kind of like the original reason for the hot fix. And then we also received a couple of bug bounty submissions, and so three in fact, and so we've kind of like triaged those and figured out that we should bring those into the hotfix as well. The other thing that was highlighted was the on-chain voting quorum guardrail. So in the contracts, we have these kind of like guardrails, which means that the PDAO can't set the some of the numbers to the extremes. So that's kind of like a double protection, or it protects us on two fronts. First one is that if the PDAO governance was ever circumvented for some reason, then you can't set it to something. You can't set these things to something ridiculous. The other thing is it's kind of like the fat finger thing, where somebody might do it by mistake and try to set it to something again that would have some sort of damage to the protocol. So these guardrails are in place to make sure that they're kind of like sensible values for these things. Unfortunately, the guardrail for the on-chain voting quorum was too high. It was like 51%, which was too high. So we've adjusted that so that it's more sensible, and that the PDAO can kind of like set that. And also we're setting the quorum to now I've forgotten what we're actually setting it to, but it's in the RPIP. So we're setting the actual on-chain quorum to a value in that process as well. There were also in the hotfix, there were also two other items that were kind of raised by the community as part of the RPIP 62 kind of discussion, which is known as Saturn 0. The first one was that you can't set the minimum RPL stake per mini pool to 0. It kind of like reverts, or it quasi-reverts actually. So that's actually kind of more of a bug fix, because it's possible for the PDAO to do that. So we should actually fix that bug anyway. The other thing was, if RPIP 62 were to go ahead, it would break one of the protections that we have in the software, which is this penalty for scrubbing. This is all to do with protecting rETH funds, basically. So somebody could potentially, so we have this scrub period, and somebody could potentially deposit using a particular pub key, and set their withdrawal, claim their withdrawal credentials, and then deposit through Rocket Pool. And essentially what it means is that the funds, the 32 ETH or whatever, will go to their withdrawal credentials, not the Rocket Pool ones. And so we have this scrub period that basically scrubs or stops mini pools from going ahead if it detects the situation. And there's a penalty, like an RPL penalty on that, because it can, if somebody were to do it, it would take quite a lot of funds. But if somebody were to do that, they could essentially DOS the ODAO and get these mini pools through. Very, very long-winded explanation, but because if RPIP 62 were to go ahead, there wouldn't be any RPL in some of those situations. So we changed it to an ETH penalty rather than an RPL penalty, and so that's kind of like a hotfix as well.
Okay. And yeah, I looked it up. We were talking at the RPIP proposes to set it to 30% for the quorum for the PDAO voting. And so this is kind of an interesting thing, right? So we have this Houston hotfix, right? Houston being the last upgrade that happened maybe 4 months ago or 5 months ago, right? And so this is both a retroactive kind of bug fix, bounty bug fix issues that they found in there, and it's also a little bit of foreshadowing, setting some of the parameters to be Saturn 0 compatible, and it's It's also a little confusing, I guess, that the vote for this is RPIP 63, which is after the Saturn Zero vote, but it's just because we kind of had the cart before the horse on this in terms of a little bit of governance. Right? Normally the RPIP and the vote would have come up, and then the work would have been done. But in this case, I think we were kind of scrambling, and now have to kind of go back and check the governance boxes to get this in place, right? So this is the vote for RPIP 63, right? It's currently has about 80% in favor of it. It's reached quorum. It still has a week open, so I guess for those listening on the call, if you haven't voted already, speak now or forever hold your peace. But Langers, a couple follow-up questions on this is one, I guess, right? So you've tested this, right? This has been out on Husky, right? You've already tested it, launched it out there. If it does pass in a week, maybe foreshadow, tell us a little bit about where it is right now. And if it does pass in a week, how quickly will this be deployed? Can you foreshadow the timing of getting the Houston hotfix out?
Yeah, so it's been released to Husky. I'll actually properly announce that today. So it's on Husky for kind of like beta testing. We've done our own testing on DevNet to make sure things are kind of okay, and that's been fine. So now it's on Husky for beta testing. In terms of the launch date, it still is slightly up in the air, but it's not like basically the date that we're targeting is the 28th of October. So that's when we're looking at executing the upgrade. So it will actually we'll be raising the proposal next week, I think. So I'm looking at the timeline. So we'll be doing some beta testing kind of like this week, and then at the end of this week we will kind of deploy the contracts and kind of open those up for everyone to verify and that sort of thing. And then on Monday we will raise the proposal with the ODAL, and then there'll be the 7-day vote delay. The ODAL will then vote it in, and then we will execute the upgrade on that following Monday, which is the 28th. So that's the kind of like plan at the moment.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Okay, so now maybe this is a part, and I'll take a look at trading here just to see if there's some questions, but maybe this is a part where we start to transition to Saturn Zero, right? I guess somewhere in between here, and maybe I'm a little confused, somewhere in between here, there's also a change about giving up the PDAL Guardian. Is that part of the Houston hotfix? Does that happen between Houston hotfix and Saturn Zero? And I guess we'll get to Saturn Zero about, okay, that vote is also going on, but it looks very favorable. And it's just settings in the protocol. So what happens after the Houston hotfix is deployed? How quickly does Saturn Zero happen? Can you help me in the transition now from the Houston hotfix after October 28th when it goes out to mainnet? What happens between there with the PDAL Guardian and Saturn Zero? Walk us through that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So as soon as the hotfix has been deployed, the parameter changes can effectively be made. In theory, like I would prefer it to be a little bit later, if I'm completely honest. Only really because of the we need to develop the reward tree aspects of Saturn Zero. And so we're developing that at the moment. But effectively, the changes, the parameter changes, could be made on the 28th of October as well. So that's what we're targeting at the moment in terms of that. We're working on the reward tree stuff in the background. Hopefully, we should be code complete by the 28th of October, which would be fantastic. On the reward tree side, that would be fantastic. But we need to kind of like see how that kind of like progresses. But essentially, the settings can be applied as soon as the hotfix has been released. One of the things, the way that in the vote text of the of rPip 62, it basically says that that the community will instruct the team to execute it via Bootstrap. So we still have PDAL Bootstrap or PDAL Guardian at the moment, and so we can apply those changes basically immediately. So that's what we'll do in terms of that. Mainly because the PDAL voting system won't be turned on at that point, but very soon after, and I haven't kind of like scheduled a date for that yet, but very soon after we'll be able to enable the PDAL voting. We'll do probably like a test, and then we will say that that's working fine, and then the PDAL essentially will be the helm, I guess, and then very soon after that we will, once we have some valid kind of like testing on mainnet, then we'll essentially disable PDAL Guardian or PDAL Bootstrap, and then the PDAL will be in full control.
Okay, a lot to digest there. Let me see if I heard you correctly here. So, Houston hotfix, you're targeting 10/28, assuming the vote continues the way it is, right?
28.
Yeah, exactly, right. So that yeah, I mean, yeah, this is good. I don't want to get like super excited here, but let me make sure I'm hearing this right. So we get 10/28 comes out again. All of this is predicated on both votes passing the way that they're trending right now. Okay, as soon as you deploy the Houston hotfix, then immediately, perhaps even that same day, you can now make the protocol changes that Saturn Zero calls for, and that will enable the ETH only mini pools to be created. The only thing that will kind of lag that is, and it's already included in the rPip, is that the team gets 1 or 2 reward cycles to make the changes to the reward spec afterwards. But the plan is on the same day or relatively in a short period of time as the Houston hotfix is also to launch Saturn Zero. Those two will come, I'll say simultaneously, but pretty close.
Yes, that's it exactly.
Okay. And then why the 28th? Does that correspond with one of the rewards period? Is that why we're targeting that date?
So it's quite tight to be able to do it before the. So yeah, the on the 24th is a reward period, is a reward day, right? And it's too tight to do it before the reward day, and we don't like doing releases on a Friday because we want to be around to support the. Basically, we want time to support the kind of like release, and so so that's why we're releasing it on a Monday. So we got all week to kind of like support the release, and we can fix any issues kind of like really quickly. So that's the gist of it.
Okay.
It's just not fantastic timing with the reward period. We don't want to do a release immediately before a reward period, because we find that's amps up the risk essentially.
Yeah, wow. Just still in a little bit of shock. We're this close to having some confirmed launch dates on this thing. This is really good. And then I think I heard you say that the change to remove the PDAL Guardian, to put the PDAL fully in charge, that would happen after the hotfix Saturn Zero day, right? And you said relatively short thereafter. Does that mean like the week of the 28th? Does that mean a week later? When do you think the PDAL Guardian will go away?
I mean, because we are there's a fair amount of change happening that week with rPip 62 and rPip 63 going live. I wouldn't probably turn the PDAL governance on that week. I would at least wait 7 days before that, after that, just to bed those changes in. But then we'll activate PDAO governance, maybe like a week later, and then I would like to do some kind of like mainnet testing of PDAO governance. But that actually does take a few weeks to kind of like do, because you have to vote stuff in. But at least kind of like one test, and then we can deactivate the PDAO governance.
The Guardian, yeah.
Because I think we also need to probably structure some like security council tests as well. So just to make sure that that process is also working.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point.
I'd say it's a few weeks after, so we can probably turn the PDAO governance stuff on like a week later than the releases. It would probably be then a few weeks later to turn Bootstrap off, because we just need to run those tests.
Okay, got it. And I think that's a good point that I didn't have straight in my head, is that it's kind of a two-step process on the on-chain vote, the on-chain governance, and then the PDAO Guardian removal, is that they don't have to happen simultaneously. You can turn on the on-chain voting on mainnet, but still leave the Guardian in place, launch that maybe on like November 4th. That would be 7 days after the 28th, right? And then run it for a little bit of time, do the mainnet test on it, and then when you come back from DevCon, then shut it off if everything's good.
Yeah, that's basically it. Because then DevCon is very soon after that, so so we can probably do some of that Security Council and PDAO testing. Security Council is a bit harder because we'll be away, but we can probably still do that. I'm just thinking out loud. But
I was going to say we're all going to be in a bar somewhere in Bangkok, right?
Yeah, I know. So that might be that the Security Council stuff might be a little bit harder, but that's actually easier to do. So we can probably do that when we get back anyway. The PDAO testing we could do while we're away, and then we can essentially. So basically, you're looking at kind of like end of November, beginning of December, that we look to kind of like turn the PDAO Guardian off, but that does depend on how that testing kind of goes and how it's structured and that sort of thing.
Okay, definitely exciting times. I mean, yeah, this is maybe I'll kind of pause here to see if there's anybody that has trading questions, either trading or here. But man, what an accomplishment to be able to go into DevCon with both the launch of the Houston hotfix and Saturn Zero, and to say Rocket Pool supports ETH only mini pools leading into the staking conference. I mean, that would just be a tremendous milestone to hit before that deadline.
Yeah, no, it'd be fantastic. I think it kind of the timing. I know that's definitely something that the community have been kind of like aiming for and that sort of thing. So yeah, no, it'd be really good.
Okay. Anything that you can think of on either the hotfix or Saturn Zero that we haven't covered yet, or any questions from the community here?
I don't. Apart from the point you said about the reward tree, there is stipulation in the RPIP to have like I think it's one period. But yeah, we're going to be working to try to make sure we hit that. But yeah, that's the only thing I think of.
Yeah, it strongly suggests within one reward period, but I think gives an option if the team can't make it for some reason to hit two. But I agree with you. The target should be one.
Yeah. I mean, the reward period changes are quite simple, but there's some ramifications. So we do need to kind of like manage that, particularly from like an infrastructure perspective, from an ODAO infrastructure perspective, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's not trivial, those changes, but they're what we're kind of working on.
Yeah, so all the pressure is on Thomas and Patches, I guess, huh?
I think that'll be news to Thomas, but yeah, but yes, essentially.
Okay, excellent.
I'll ultimately, if we ultimately it has to be done right. So we'll kind of like we're definitely aiming to get it done by then, but we will do it right. So if it doesn't hit that, then it doesn't hit that. But that's definitely something that we're targeting and aiming for.
Yeah, no, I seem to remember a launch of the protocol one day, and the day before a bug was found, and the mission had to be scrubbed. So yeah, been there, done
Yeah,
that. But yeah, no, always do things safely. But it's good to have goals and try to achieve them.
yeah,
Okay, well, maybe then foreshadow just a little bit. Let's say that everything goes according to plan here. We launch, we run into DevCon, we're celebrating the ETH only, we're back to being competitive with the other market forces. We come back, we turn off the PDAO Guardian, we now have on-chain governance, and now the team comes back from DevCon and is now focusing entirely on Saturn One. Tell me what you know now about Saturn One, and anything you want to share with the community about that.
yeah. I mean, we pretty much are um, uh, focused on Saturn One. Um, we've been working through at the moment. In actual fact, immediately after this community call, we've got a big kind of like workshop on Saturn One to do some more breakdown, get our tasks on the task board, and start planning out milestones. So that's going to be a big session today. But yeah, so we've definitely been working on Saturn One anyway. Kane's made some really well. He's basically finished the beacon chain verifier. I've been working on deposit mechanics, the megapool delegate stuff. There's a whole heap of stuff that we've been working on, but that's why I'm trying to get things onto the task board so that I have decent kind of like clarity on the picture,
visibility on
so
the milestones.
yeah,
huh?
yeah, and what that means for milestones and that sort of thing. I think, as I said in like previous community calls, I think the aim for the strategy for the milestones is to do them similar to what Ethereum kind of does, where they do like the DevNet releases and then testnet releases and that sort of thing. So I think we'll do like we'll do some DevNet releases for like there'll be like the milestone will be DevNet 1, for example, and DevNet 2, DevNet 3. And within those releases, there'll be some scope. And so I think what we're looking at the moment is, for example, DevNet 1 is kind of pretty much everything to do with depositing. So you can kind of like the basic happy path for depositing into a mega pool and that sort of thing. And then we'll kind of build out from there. Each DevNet release will add something, add some new stuff. So that's what we're thinking at the moment. But until I kind of like get all of the tasks in there and see what makes sense in terms of like a delivery order, I kind of can't break it down much more than that. But that's the idea anyway.
Yeah, I guess two just commentaries on that. One thing, and it's great to hear that you're doing the Trello board planning or the milestone mapping for it. But yeah, do you think if there's any way the community as a whole can help and kind of where that is and how to share those back with the community, I think would be really good. That work product you're putting together about the milestones and then secondly, I do recall maybe from the last conversation, I somewhat had in my head that there's some dependencies on Saturn One with the next Ethereum upgrade, Pectra, right? But I guess I learned that there are no dependencies, right? Everything in Saturn One is kind of irrelevant to whatever's in Pectra. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that again?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so we're independent from that release. We don't have a dependency on that release. Everything we need is already on mainnet. So 4788 was the only thing we needed. So that was in the last release. So we're good. We're good to go. Yeah, yeah, no,
And,
it's fine for that from that
and,
perspective.
and all the things about like max EB and all that sort of stuff, I guess it's just
Mhm.
agnostic to whatever we do, right? We can work with it or we can work without it, or it just doesn't matter anymore. Huh?
Yeah. So what we're doing is with MaxEB, we are designing kind of like the contracts and and the code to be compatible with MaxEB in the future. But it won't take advantage of MaxEB now. That was kind of like a decision that was hashed out during the RPIP kind of like uh, editing and drafting process. So it won't use MaxEB, but it we our design kind of like strategy or um, approach is that we will design it in a way that we could apply MaxEB in the future if we wanted to. So currently Saturn 1 and Saturn 2 does not support MaxEB, but a following release after that could potentially, if we want to go down that route. We may not need to, uh, but it's the options there if we need it.
Okay, perfect. And then before we transition over to a couple items for Mav here, are there any other things that we didn't cover in the R&D section you want to share with it? We'll still have some follow up with you about DevCon and a little bit about this home staking discussion going on, but anything in the R&D that we haven't covered?
No, I think that's pretty good. I think in terms of you mentioned about the community kind of like helping out with stuff. So I think previously we've never really opened our DevNets up before, and to some degree I am mildly nervous about that because they are DevNets, they will break, but I think it's good to get the kind of community involved in some of that early, even if that's just a very, very small group. Um, so that's one thing that we're kind of like keen is to get that feedback and testing done early. There's a lot of scope to get through with Saturn, and so the more testing we can front load, the better. Um, and so that's the idea of kind of like releasing to the DevNets. So yeah, that's going to be the plan, and obviously we will communicate our progress towards those DevNet releases, and when and the kind of like targeted dates for those DevNet releases. Um, the ones that are very more certain are the ones, the earlier ones, and as we go along, we'll be able to get more certain about the other ones. But yeah, as we go through and release to the DevNet, we can work with the community on that testing effort. There will also be clarifications and all this sort of stuff that we will need to do as we go through as well, because no spec is ever, exactly. There's always holes in specs, no matter how, no matter how comprehensive you are on a spec. There's always kind of holes and that sort of thing. So that's the other thing that we were working with the community on is clarifying parts of the RPIPs and filling any gaps and that sort of thing. So that they're all stuff that we need to that we're going to look forward to over the next few kind of weeks and months. So yeah, it'd be good. It'd be a good collaborative effort, I think.
Yeah, I do get the overall sense that there's lots of people in the community that are willing to help, no matter what the request is. So, if there is a way the community can help, just send the message out, and we'll figure out a way to do it. Um, okay, Mav, maybe it looks like you're still with us here. Maybe tell us a little bit. There were a couple of items in your area. I guess the first one here is there's a crypto management and privacy management application. Another DeFi integration I've never heard of called Fluid Key. What's unique about them, and what did they share this week?
Yeah, well, they might be a guest on a future community call. Thanks to some work from the Rocket Pool intern, we're now in touch with them. But yeah, just happened to notice on Twitter X that this platform had um, essentially natively integrated Rocket Pool staking. So people that have ETH on this platform can pretty easily liquid stake it via rETH. To be honest, because it came out of the blue a little bit, I'm not sure exactly on the details of how it works, but I guess the closest comparison you could use is it's not quite a wallet, but maybe like a layer on top of a wallet that helps you manage funds, and there seems to be some kind of privacy feature as well. So it seems like they may be a good guest for a future community call, but I guess there are some common values there between Fluid Key and Rocket Pool to the extent that they kind of built the staking aspect of their product on Rocket Pool. So yeah, watch this space for potentially more information on Fluid Key.
Okay, and then there is a second announcement. This one by Shapeshift. Now, I've heard of them before. I always assumed they were some form of maybe DEX or whatever. But what did they share?
Yeah, I thought the name was quite familiar again when I saw it pop up on X. I must have seen them somewhere. They seem to be a DeFi aggregation protocol, and they just put out a little thread on Rocket Pool. Nothing that would be news to anyone in the community, but still it was good to see. And yeah, we may get them on as a guest in the future too. It's looking pretty likely that next week we'll have Node set on.
Shapeshift are OG. They've been around for ages. That's actually Eric Voorhees. Well, used to be his company. Now it's a DAO. I think it's a DAO. Yeah. Anyway, it's run by the Fox token or something like that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I've seen the name. I've heard it come up. I can't say I've used that protocol, but again, I'm not all that well experienced in DeFi. I'm still learning the ropes in here. I feel like I've missed the whole sector of the Ethereum ecosystem in DeFi, so I got lots to learn. But yeah, I'd love to learn more about them if we could ever get them here on the community call here. And then finally, we get to a tweet that you've called out here, which was a lot of tweets, or a lot of, I don't know I guess there's still tweets on X, right? About the whole conversation about home staking, bandwidth, minimum node requirements, and the barriers to home staking. And I think it's so interesting, just personally, that we're heading into DevCon, and I remember the last DevCon in Bogota. The big conversation there was. Mike from NodeSet hosted a panel discussion, and I remember this was the one where another protocol was saying, "Hey, we actually think Ethereum is just going to be run by professional node operators only, and home staking nodes are going away." And it created a lot of controversy around that. And I think it's very interesting now going into the next DevCon, we're still talking about that. So I don't know, Langers and Mav, like. What are your thoughts about this? I mean, should there be some minimum requirements about either bandwidth or CPU specs? I think it's funny. I even produced these old Celeron computers from the 1990s that will run the thing. Can we upgrade the specifications, or does that have an impact to home stakers? And does that degrade the credible neutrality of Ethereum if we lose some of our home staker capacity? We're already a minority of the validators that are out there. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk. I do think there is a balance. I do think there's a trade-off, and it is a protocol trade-off that you're kind of like making between supporting accessibility and essentially accessibility, which is really important for kind of having a decentralized node set, and being permissionless, and having home stakers who are very, very important. But as you said, the kind of like credible neutrality. I do think there's the on the other side of the trade-off is kind of like innovation and scaling, and a lot of other kind of like heavy things on that side. So I do think you have to be balanced in that approach. Have some sort of minimum. I think you have to have some sort of minimum standard because, as you said, you could get to the extremes of supporting very, very low end sort of stuff. But at the same time, you want to encompass as many home stakers as possible. So, that's where this balance is very, very difficult. In from my perspective, I think we should be supporting. I think we should be tending towards credible neutrality rather than pushing it all the way to the other end. Yeah, it is a very hard balance to get. But I think we should be, aiming for accessibility, aiming for getting as many people involved in staking rather than. But also, I do think there's like a sensible, like pragmatic minimum. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, Mav, what's your thoughts?
Well, for me personally, I was surprised as to like the longevity of this back and forth on Twitter. So these couple of items that we've talked about in terms of like integrations and what's been happening out on X, a kind of a sneak peek front running the bi-weekly update a little bit, and the post that I'm going to link in the bi-weekly, it was hard to narrow down and find one because there was so much great content up over the past week or so. This post is from someone defending home stakers, and it says, anyone saying Ethereum should get rid of solo stakers is a VC-funded plant or a Fed, because this discussion did end up, going off the rails a little bit to the point where there were people, suggesting that home stakers don't even really add any value, kind of taking the extreme position. I don't know whether it was to make a point or what was really going on behind the scenes, but it was good to see a few of the usual suspects standing up to defend the home staker side of things. I mean, it's one thing to have a discussion as to like minimum requirements or how should we prioritize, but to see people, or should I say accounts, you never know who runs these accounts sometimes, going to the extent of saying that home stakers are unnecessary was not great to see. And the fact that it kind of stuck around long enough to build a bit of momentum, and even had people like Vitalik wading in the comments. Curious, interesting. But I'm guessing, like all things, people seem to have a pretty short memory when it comes to X. So there'll be something new very soon, I'm sure, and that will be another kind of forgotten topic for a little while.
I think, Mav, you mentioned Jasper's response. What was Jasper's response? That was quite funny.
Yeah, Jasper was talking about, the comment was, well, how could solo stakers be the kind of heart of Ethereum, because it started out at proof of work. And I know Jasper was pointing out that there's, a non-zero set of home stakers now that had, mined Ethereum and proof of work days. And, they might have had a mine as part of a mining pool, just, in order to return a monthly profit versus the luck of, winning a block. I think the point was that there were people that wanted to run the blockchain in their home back in proof of work days. And those continue to be some subset of the stakers today that are running a proof of stake node. But yeah, I too was kind of surprised by a lot of the conversation, and it is kind of hard. I mean, I definitely want what's best for Ethereum. I think it's great we're having the conversation. It is always kind of mind blowing that the protocol is so non-demanding in terms of hardware requirements. I mean, I don't think it should be like one of those like mega ETH protocols that requires a terabyte of RAM or whatever, something that is entirely beyond any home lab setup. But it is quite shocking that, like, look, for a while we were running these things on Raspberry Pis. I certainly run, my NodeSet node on a Celeron chip that was designed in the 1990s. I mean, come on, like, we can at least, my mainnet one is on an 8th gen Intel NUC. That's five generations old.
NodeSet is listening. NodeSet's listening.
Yeah, but it's sort of like,
Don't worry, I've talked to Ken about this in the past. It's not something that we didn't know.
But they work, but just because the protocol isn't all that demanding. So, I don't know. I have strong beliefs in the, home individuals, and any individual should be able to run a node and validate the network. That's what Ethereum is to me and kind of its core value. But I am also very supportive of some minimum requirements. The only minimum requirement we've ever had is just, speed on the disk writing, right? So many IOPS, but come on, we could come up with a little bit better processor or bandwidth stuff, and it's not gonna exclude home stakers, I don't think, as an overall group. But those are just my opinions on this thing. But it is interesting how many people have an opinion and kind of the discussion going in. And later this week I'll be at the permissionless conference, which is the one that Bankless and Blockworks do in Utah this year. And so it'd be interesting to see if there's a lot of conversation in that group later on this week about the topic, or as Mav maybe you suggest, they're already on to the next topic. Maybe as we kind of get to our last topic here, let's talk a little bit about the team's next trip, right, which is Bangkok. And there are two components for it. I guess the first one is the staking summit. Last year in Istanbul, it was good. But this year, I just posted, maybe yesterday, they posted all the protocols. And if people listening to this call haven't had a chance, go look in the conferences. There's a thread in there called DevCon 2024. But they actually released like all the protocols, more than 130 protocols, I think they said, or maybe it was 140 protocols. But I thought it was interesting just looking at all the logos and names of all these staking protocols. There are a lot of them I've never heard of, and I thought I was paying attention to at least the staking space of Ethereum. Mav and Langers, what are your thoughts going into the staking summit? What do you want out of the booth? Is the team going to give a talk, and what's going to happen at the staking summit?
Are they staking protocols, or are they restaking protocols? That would be my first question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll see if I can post that same image here in the trading channel, but it's worth looking at.
Yeah, so in terms of like what we would want to try and get out of it, like staking summit is an interesting one. Obviously, it's a staking specific one. So there is obviously node operators. There's staking industry people. So it's a lot about kind of like visibility and being there. But it's also kind of a little bit of like ecosystem stuff. And talking to node operators and that sort of thing. So it's definitely an interesting one. It's not like full community, but our community will, a lot of our community will be there. It's probably really an ecosystem kind of thing, because there'll be a lot of industry people there. That's kind of the plan for the staking summit. DevCon is always about ETH researchers and core devs, really. So it's kind of chatting to those groups of people to make sure that we're kind of like getting back up to speed with what's going on, and kind of them hearing our side of our thoughts and feedback on what's going on. So yeah, that's really kind of the plan for DevCon, apart from obviously hanging out with the community and having some fun as well.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I posted it in there. It was interesting to see. I'm sure they're just kind of aggregating these companies. They put us in the home validator, the home staker / validator category, along with 38 other companies or protocols that are in that same category. And I thought, oh, that's fascinating. This is going to be, I think, interesting to see how much the space has grown in terms of an industry or a sector in the Ethereum ecosystem. And who all these new players are. It seems like everybody's new almost.
Yeah, it's definitely a growing. It's a growing industry. Like we're definitely the OGs now.
Yeah, that's kind of a weird position to be in, right? But yeah, definitely interesting. And I haven't seen the final agenda for DevCon, the actual conference. I am very impressed with, there's all these side events that normally happen at these crypto conferences. And this is the one where everybody is trying to hold true to these 4 kind of hallowed days that are DevCon. And very few protocols are planning any side events during there. It seems like everybody, thousands and thousands of people, are going to be in that main conference there, as you said, really focused on the protocol, the core researchers and the main players there. So this is going to be an interesting conference where the team is really not there to kind of share what it's doing, I suppose, downstream to its users like us, but instead you guys, it's kind of flipped. You're there to kind of advocate and learn from some of the core devs and some of the other ones. So it should be a really busy conference, I think, for the team.
Yeah, it's always. I really like DevCon. I would probably like to see some talks this time around, but we'll see. But usually I don't get to do that because I'm outside chatting to people. But yeah, it's a good one. I think it's definitely important for us, so that's why DevCon's always kind of like on the list. It's also obviously a pretty exciting one in general, because being specifically Ethereum and specifically in that kind of like dev space, it's pretty interesting to see what's going on very more broadly as well. I think I generally listen to the talks on the flight home often. I download them all and then watch them on the way home. But because it is interesting to see what's going on in the ecosystem as a whole. But yeah, most of that is, most of our day to day will be either catching up with the community and chatting about stuff around the protocol, or reaching out and talking to core developers and researchers and that sort of stuff to kind of get ahead.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess the one other thing that folks in the community want to know is there's going to be a small but very dedicated Rocket Pool following there. Maybe we'll pick up a number of node operators from the Southeast Asia part, but I know some of the more prominent members might be making the trip out there. Like I say, if you're going to go to one conference, I mean, DevCon, I think even after all the ones I've been to, would certainly be if you could only afford one in your lifetime, make it a DevCon. So, but it sounds like we want to do a Rocket Pool meetup or a Rocket Pool beer night or something, karaoke and beer. I don't know. I guess there's a lot of things to do there in Bangkok.
Who's planting the karaoke seed? Is that Woe?
that might be Woe pushing on that one, but but I don't know, Mav. Any plans for it? Everybody's trying to figure out, like, I guess the one day that all these protocols decided to put their side event, it'd be interesting to see if anybody goes to them. But I read an article. They said their teams are probably spending $2 million in advertising for the day before DevCon. I guess that's November 11th. I think it's that Monday. That I've never seen so many side events happening simultaneously in one day, and it's really large protocols with big marketing things that are probably renting out every venue in that entire city. But what's Rocket Pool? Do we have any plans? Do we know when that's going to be? Are we going to try to break away for a dinner the night of DevCon? Are we going to try to do something right before, right afterwards? What's the plan?
So we're wrapping up. Actually, first of all, we might have to let Langers go now or soon, but I think we're kind of reaching the end anyway. So yeah, Langers, if you need to go, that's all good. But in terms of the activities for DevCon, the issue we have is obviously those 4 main days, 12th to 15th, are going to be pretty busy, and from the sounds of things, it's not kind of finish on the dot of 5 sort of thing. Some of the days, especially the first day, may run a little bit late. We then have 11/11, where there's 101 different events. So either the 10th, the day before that, which is right after the staking summit, or the 16th after DevCon are good candidates. But obviously there may be some people flying in and out on those dates. So this week we have to wrap up a few things when it comes to actually it's just with the staking summit, but things like branding for the booth and the name of the talk that we want to give. So along with that, I will get out a notification just to see when people are going to be in town, to see what kind of interest there is. Are we talking, half a dozen people, or is it more like an ETH Denver? I'm guessing not quite the size of ETH Denver, but the good thing about Bangkok, of course, is there's no shortage of venues to grab a beer or something to eat, or to have a little sing along.
Are we planning something like hangover style-y, or?
Well, I think I was trying to think where that bar from the movie is located. It might be further into the city. It's a good spot. Who knows? Maybe.
I was joking, but it's all good.
I was thinking I haven't watched that edition of The Hangover. I'm gonna have to watch it going into Bangkok so we can meet up there.
Yeah, watch this space.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing. They don't have the actual day agenda yet, but I'm kind of picking some Twitter rumors that most of the programming regarding the talks and the workshops and the discussion zones are pretty much going to kind of end at 7 p.m. and then they'll just have kind of cocktails and individual chats. The venue, I think, is open, like most of them, 24 hours. But I think, I think it may be possible even during the week of the 4 days of DevCon, if we wanted to do an evening thing, a late dinner evening thing, that might be another window to consider as well too.
Sounds good. Yeah, Bangkok does tend to run later into the night, like a lot of those Asian cities, so it shouldn't be a problem.
All right, Mav, and then as we wrap today's call up, anything coming up in the week ahead for the community to keep an eye out for?
We are approaching nailing down a time for next week's community call, which you've so kindly agreed to come back yet again to host for us. And as I kind of alluded to briefly earlier in this call, we'll have nodes set along, so that will be great, and likely to see around that time some of the work being done behind the scenes to ramp up quote unquote marketing going into DevCon, in terms of reminding people what kind of opportunities are coming up with Rocket Pool. So looking forward to getting stuck into some of that. Obviously, some of these things like the Twitter X account either being reactivated or a new one being created are kind of key to that. But yeah, certainly at the risk of saying too much soon TM, there are definitely some exciting things kind of coming up in the next month or so. So lots to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally stoked on the expected timeline here, and I think that's great about everything coming up with Saturn, the Houston hotfix, maybe some news about the Twitter account, and the fact that we're going to see each other all in person in less than 30 days from now. So this is looking to be a really exciting month ahead here. So I'm pretty excited. Langers and Mav, it's been an absolute pleasure to host another community call with you, and thank you for sharing everything.
Thanks again, Ken. Always great to chat.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Talk to you all in trading. Bye.